Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Cocoron. In the last part, we continued on to the game's stages, and now we're going to be heading on towards Trump Castle. Now, last part I mentioned that there's one particular stage that's probably the worst for platforming, barring the end game stages I've alluded to a couple times at this point. At the end of the day, it's if you head to anywhere from Starset Hill, Sunset Hill, whatever it is on the top left of the map, as while the first portion is more or less the same as the little section at the end of the stage is coming to here, where we got the stars falling from the sky that split off into two star eruptions going either of the horizontal directions. The later portion is straight up platforming on small platforms, which if you have something that either has a very low jump or is otherwise heavy or can't really fly, you're going to be in trouble here. The platforms here with the skunks, by the way, function a little bit like ones from one of the Dr. Cossack stages in Mega Man 4 for a very distinct comparison, where the moment you step on them, they start moving downwards, but if you jump, they start rising back up, so you need to balance their altitude properly so you don't fall into the bottomless pit below. Because bottomless pits are by and large the only instant kill thing in this game. Which is a little bit odd, because usually games of this age, you have a lot of instant kill variety hazards all over the place, like usually spikes even act as that, but in the rare case there are spike-esque things in this game, they don't do instant kill, they just do a lot of damage. So they can be instant kill, but they're usually not. Now this is probably the part that can be a little bit worse for some ways. We now have the platform in the clouds. And the bad part about this is that it's minimally hard to tell at first you can use these as platforms, and for another, we got panda bear enemies scrolling on the right side of the screen, and the thing that's annoying about them is when you shoot them, or if they get too close, they throw their balls out at you, and they are pretty either precise with the aiming or they bounce all over the place, making it a little hard to avoid. Thankfully, using the melody weapon here can be a little useful because it allows you to not only destroy the panda, but also the ball, which means you can get two separate eggs from this. Yeah, that ball moves real fast when they first throw it, as you can see there. It's tough to dodge. I would recommend making a bird or a jet character for this stage in general, but that's honestly my advice for the game, period, because honestly, when it comes to the body types that have extra bonuses, like the tank not sliding down slopes, or the boat being on the surface of water, both of those only really come into play in usefulness in maybe 2 stages of the game, if even. Whereas being able to fly slightly or have high HP in the case of the top body type, whose name I forget, I want to say it's just like armor, those just become more useful in the long run. Hell, the armor I would especially say is more useful, as that at least gets you a lot of HP, which for stages where there's a lot of hazards can be pretty useful, especially with how common HP drops are from enemies. Also, as you saw there, that's what the melody weapon looks like at max power, more or less. You fire 3 of them and they're a lot larger. Because of this, the melody weapon, as it grows, can become a very useful weapon for coverage on the screen for hitting bosses. With that said, you always need to be jumping to a proper altitude to reach it, so it can be a little annoying to reach all the same. Plus, there's always going to be things that are just awkwardly enough out of your reach. Like, look, to hit this little skunk, I have to go real out of my way to hit this, and that can be a little awkward to work with. Again, my recommendations for newcomers, use the flower, the shuriken, or the ball. Pencil as well can be pretty useful. In fact, pencil's biggest usefulness is that it's one of the few weapons that allows you to reach diagonally from you at a very good speed, because even the weapons that move diagonally when you fire them, no matter what, either they're a little bit slower or the arc can be a little more awkward.
Oh, wait on! I was tricked by the Joker. I've been trapped in Trump Castle for so long. Please help me.
Alright, this is probably the most annoying boss fight in the game. We gotta fight the Joker. But the Joker doesn't start off like a normal boss fight. It starts out by sending, I believe, 10 different cards of spades at you. Each one firing that amount of spades that the card number is at where you are in sequence. Thankfully, that's pretty easy to dodge at first. Once you start getting a lot of them, though, you need to start moving back and forth across the screen at a somewhat fast pace, and dodging them gets hard because of this. You can destroy the spades, but they don't drop anything, so I also just think it's better to dodge out of the way, only firing what you need to fire to help dodge. But this makes the start of this fight real slow. It also makes it one of the longest boss fights in the game, in a game where the boss fights are usually pretty short. Once you reach the end of the spades, we're still technically not at the main boss fight again. Don't know why this fight's particularly longer, because we're going to need to take care of the queen, the king, and I think a jack, which are just two bigger projectiles that bounce around the screen and don't contribute to the boss's health still. I really don't get why they made the boss like this. It's kind of a cool set piece in some regards. But why have a fight this long in a game like this? This is a fight I could recommend bringing a higher HP enemy to, or higher HP character to, but it's troublesome. Thankfully, the Joker itself doesn't have any attacks outside of just body contact, and it does get faster, as you can see, the more you hit it. To the point where dodging it can be a little bit troublesome. But this makes for a hard boss fight, I guess, in this game's context. Though there are times like that where you can fire a thing, miss, and then still have it hit because it moved right into them. Predicting the movement of this boss fight is, I wouldn't say an impossibility, but it's definitely hard as you progress into the fight, because it really does start moving kind of ridiculous speeds by the end of it. Not helping is that the melody's big problem as well is until you really power it up, it's also not very strong damage-wise. Not that the actual strength of weapons gets that different from each other by the end of their 5 levels of powering up, but depending on how easy they are to spam or where they can reach, they can be a lot more powerful due to that, is the reasoning here.
I'm finally back to normal. Thank you. If you're strong enough to defeat the Joker, I'm sure you can save Princess Rua.
And with that, we've now defeated all of the main stages in the game. We're now entering the middle third, quote-unquote. That can be a very short third if you know exactly what to do, or handling it the way I'm going to be handling it. Before we go on, though, we have to now make our last playable character. I believe 6 is the total amount you have in the game, or is it 7? Somewhere in that regards. And this is the one I get a little bit out there with as well, as I use one of my least favorite weapons in the game on this particular character. I use the Parasol. The Parasol is interesting in that it fires straight ahead of you at a very far arc that slowly rises up towards the top of the screen. Which means for enemies straight in front of you, it's not too bad. For enemies that are above you, though, you need to be pretty precise with your positioning. As it powers up, you fire up more Parasols that rise up at better arcs, and they're also much larger. And, you know what? Your name will be Kevin. Well, let's make sure Kevin, not Kevin. Where's the N? Where is it? Remember the alphabet? There it is. So yeah, here you can see the true HP strength you can have in the game by using armor. Not quite max, you kind of need to go for both armor, I think, for that, or whatever the highest HP head is. But the Parasol, awkward to work with. Whoa. I heard something from my brother Cocoron. He said that Rua's trapped in a huge egg. But where's Cocoron now? A good question. So now we need to look for Princess Rua directly, and Cocoron is right. She is located in a giant egg, which we've seen numerous of at this point, located in the midpoint of any given 2 stages, no matter where you go from. Princess Rua is not in a random location, though. She is always directly between Milk Sea and Fairy Forest. The problem is, at this point in the game, there's not only some stage combinations we haven't quite seen, but there's also more characters for you to power up. So I recommend if you're playing the game yourself, take this moment to go back through stages you haven't been to, through combinations you haven't used yet, to power up your characters. In fact, that's what we're doing for more or less the rest of this video. I only showed this particular stage off at full length, but starting from the second go-through stages, we've already technically been through in some regards before. I am just trying to show off as many stage combinations as I can, and I want to make sure my characters are as powered up as I can get them. Within a reasonable time frame, at least. Because you can theoretically just go between 2 stages infinitely to max out a character. Not quite going to do that. As sort of my intention here is to replicate what it's like to play through the game yourself, and if you're new to the game, you are going to probably fumble about between stages trying to find the correct giant egg, even if she is always in the same place. When I'm playing the game for myself on most occasions and being a lot more, I guess, direct to the point with how I make my characters, where I try to make as many jets and birds as I can, and use like only two or maybe three weapon types at most. I probably already have the characters I want maxed at this point, and I'm just doing maybe 1 or 2 extra stages to get to the correct point I need to be at. And my other main goal, again, just show off as much of the game as I can, stage design-wise, and there is some unique stage design when going from one stage to another. At least 2 or 3 variants of each stage in that regard, sort of. I think the only stage we don't see is the unique stage design that happens if you go from Fairy Forest to Milk Sea, because I go to Milk Sea, I go to Fairy Forest from Milk Sea to reach Princess Rua. I forget exactly how different the level design is in every instance. I want to say there's usually only the ending of a stage from maybe 1 or 2 different locations, and the beginning of each stage from 1 or 2 locations, so maybe at most 3 or 4 variations. But even then, the variations get pretty minuscule at times. Like here, since we're going back to Starset Hill, we're already back at the clouds again. Also, the only reason we're seeing this particular stage at full speed, rather than the rest of the stages we're going to be doing at this point in the game, which are going to be sped up, it's because I want you to see how the parasol works in some regards, and so this character can get his own stage on screen. Because if you're playing the game yourself, you're probably going to make a character here and maybe experiment with them, so might as well mirror that. Parasol, though, as you can tell, a little awkward to work with from distances. If you're straight in front of an enemy, it's pretty simple, but that's how most weapons work if you're straight in front of an enemy. I'll give this game this, though. Definitely some cute character design, like even the enemies, which are more or less just, you know, animals. I think they did pretty good sprite work here. This game is pretty good looking for the era of NES it's in, and I guess that makes some amount of sense, because this was released, I think, 1991? Which was very late NES. Like, one of the only other games that came out for the NES at this point in Japan, I guess Famicom, would have been... I know Final Fantasy III was 1991. Actually, no, I'm gonna... NES library by date. How much of the game's library, the NES's library, was released in 91? I imagine not too much, because that is the same year as the Super Nintendo. Alright. Over 1,000 games released in Japan. 152 in 1991. Do I recognize many of these? Just scrolling through the Japanese list. Bomberman 2. One of the Robot Wars games. This, of course. Die Hard? Oh god, the one from the AVGN episode, huh? Double Dragon 3. One of the earlier Dragon Ball games. Dragon's Layer's NES port. One of the earlier Itadaki Street games, huh? One of the Fist... Were there 4 Fist of the North Star games on Famicom? Okay, then. Mario Open Golf. One of the various Monopoly ports. Ninja Gaiden 3. RoboCop 2. Mega Man 4, of course. One of the Mega Man games came out that year. Star Wars, was that the Japanese exclusive one? Or was that the... Oh no, that's the one we got. That's the one that had the weird top-down segment. Before I get back to looking at that, at this point, since I'm going to try and power up my characters, I'm just speeding up the stages we've been through or haven't been through in some regards before through these new pathways, while speeding up and playing some music just to help pace things out. This is why the middle third of the game can admittedly be very short, but also very long, because it depends on if you know exactly where she is, and also depending on whether or not you want to power up your characters. And I want to make sure I especially get the shuriken, pencil, and ball using, if you have one, characters as high up in terms of power as you can. I heard that Rua sleeps in a nearby cave. And they do admittedly try to give you some hints if you go to the NPCs at the end of certain levels as to where Rua is, so you can logic it out from that, but it does somewhat require having been to the stage where she is to start, because you might not know there's a cave between Fairy Forest and Milk Sea unless you went that way early on. And I am trying to make sure every character gets some amount of power-ups here, so this can be a good point as well to further experiment with more control. Again, depends on what you like out of the character, but yeah. Also, I completely misspoke a few parts ago when I made Geem here. As much as the one cyborg outfit looks like Kamen Rider, it's more so Cyborg 009. I completely forgot about that series until I was talking about it with a friend last night, and it just flashed in my mind, oh, wait a minute, that's what the Cyborg outfit is in this game. I watched that series when I was real little on, like, Adult Swim, early Toonami. I don't remember much about it, but I remember one of the characters dying rather brutally, and that stuck with me. It didn't really terrify me, though. And that's what I mean by the pencil getting big, by the way. Christ, that covers a lot of space right above you. And at the end of every single one of these repeat stages, Cocoron does say the exact same thing as, I wonder where in the world Princess Rua and Cocoron have gone. Oh no, I must fly above the screen now, goodbye! I also like that we get a new background screen over to this point in the game, where it's more of a stripe than the dots, although I do kind of like the polka dots. So at this point, since I'm trying to get more stages done before going for Rua, I am actively, again, going out of the way to do new stages. I feel like if a game like this was made today, this would be more of like a Metroid-like in some regard, in that there'd be hidden bonuses that you can only access in the game at this point via routes that open up from the giant eggs or things of that nature. And admittedly, I think a game like this could be interesting to tackle in a Metroid style. I guess that is sort of what some roguelites are, aren't they, huh? Like Dead Cells in particular is one I hear a lot about. Admittedly, I'm not too big of a fan of roguelikes and roguelites. Like, I like Hades, that one's pretty chill. But that's really about it. Because I don't like losing a lot of progress. So, like, if there's anything that has stuck with me from accidentally deleting my brother's FF7 save file so many years ago, it's losing progress sucks. And there's the biggest hint if you come to the king here at the end of Trump Castle. Rua is near Milk Sea in some regard, so you can figure out from there, maybe just choose any of the 4 stages you can go to from Milk Sea. It is interesting to see a game that is already as open as it is get this open in its middle third, though. Because you don't really see games get this experimental in the latter half. Usually by the time you hit the middle half, or the latter half of a game, you're pretty much stuck doing the same paces over and over again, just getting harder and harder. Not many games introduce new mechanics that late in unless it's like a set-piece-based adventure game. It Takes Two, A Way Out. Things like that come to mind in some regards, especially It Takes Two. It's just weird to see a game, especially from this era, do that. Also, this is what the boomerang can do by the time you power it up. You start getting diagonals, and it gets pretty useful for getting certain high-up eggs if in case you're going for, like, say, extra lives. Because this is also going to be a good point in the game to go through stages and grind up some extra lives. It's not the most necessary thing, but it can help for the end game.
What is it? We're very busy right now. Princess Rua? I don't know.
Fair enough. Now, with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're going to go find Princess Rua between Milk Sea and the Fairy Forest, and then head off towards the endgame marathon. See you guys then.